Hey everybody, this is Refresh, and I'm here to take a look at the Enhanced Evolution Commander deck for Magic the Gathering. It features Otrimi the Ever Playful. On the back it says, the mischievous beast Otrimi dwells among the giant roots of Ikoria's largest swamp, constantly growing and mutating. For now, it is elusive, but some hunters fear that one day it will rise as the most fearsome monster on all Ikoria. You get a deck box, 100 card deck with 17 new cards, 10 double-sided token cards, foil oversized commander card, life wheel, strategy insert, and reference card. Let's check those out. There's our foil oversized card, which I don't know what you use these for, but here we go. And Otrimi the Ever Playful costs 3 black, green, blue. Legendary creature Nightmare Beast. It has mutate for 1 black, green, and blue. And then it has trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, return target creature card with mutate from your graveyard to your hand. And it is a 6/6. I don't like these deck boxes because they don't fit sleeved cards, but there's the deck box. Here's our insert. We have some information about the commanders that are included, and then a very slight guide on how to play with each version of the commander's decks, and then a little bit more information on mutate since it's a bit more complicated as far as the rules go. General rules for how to play commander. On the back we have a bit of lore for our 3 commanders as well as some artwork for them. It's a bit scant, but I appreciate that it includes at least this much. Here is a life counter, a divider of some sort, and our deck. There's our regular sized Otrimi. That's the deck. I'll play it against its peers, and I'll be back to let you know what I think. Alright, so let's talk about Enhanced Evolution. But before we talk about the deck itself, we have to talk about the production. With all of these Ikoria Commander decks, I had some issues with the deck boxes sticking to each other. As you can see, that happened here. But what's even more egregious is that after I stored these, alongside all my other Magic products, these stuck to themselves. And so the little fold out that you got here stuck to itself, and it also stuck to my oversized copy of Otrimi. As you can see, it stuck like this, and then when I tried to pull it off, this happened. In addition, Otrimi itself has gotten massively warped here. As you can see, it is curling into itself, and there are some major bubbles that appeared due to, I think what's happening is the paper is shrinking as a result of losing hydration. And so the deck, even though I stored it in the box that it came in, even though it was stored with other Magic products in either their original boxes or in aftermarket boxes that I had purchased, can actually ruin your cards. I'm really fortunate that I sleeved all the cards in the actual deck, and even though I sleeved the cards, Otrimi itself got fairly bent here. As you can see, it is curved out. I managed to flatten it a bit, but it's still pretty curved. And I think the fact that the sleeves that I put it in are a little bit more resistant to curving is the only thing keeping Otrimi from turning into this as well. And so this is a major problem with the production of the deck. Oshimi itself is marked because of the curve. You can see that the back of the card bends a little, and when it is on the top of the deck, you're going to actually see that the Oshimi is on top, and as it gets closer and closer to the top of the deck, the more the curve becomes pronounced, and the more that you can see where Oshimi is hanging out in the deck if you decide to play with Oshimi as a card in the 99. And so this is a major problem with the production of the deck. I'm not going to belay the point that much longer, but if you have purchased this deck and you're just keeping everything in here and unsleeved, I would make sure to take a look at it to make sure that your product is safe, and just don't leave any cards unsleeved inside this box. And hopefully that should keep any other major problems from happening. But let's move on to the actual deck itself. Alright, so this deck has 4 commanders. We have Oshimi the Ever Playful, Zixara the Exemplary, Ukima the Stalking Shadow, and Kaza Ruthless Stalker. And each of these things is trying to do something different with this particular deck. The face commander Oshimi is a mutate commander, and so there are a handful of mutate cards in the deck that all have some relatively powerful effects if you decide to mutate your creatures. And it gives you a handful of creatures to mutate onto. I don't think that the creatures that you have to mutate onto are as interesting as the mutate creatures themselves, but there are some synergies that are played with in this deck with creatures that have +1/+1 counters. For example, if you mutate onto those, then even though you mutate a stronger creature onto it, they'll get even stronger with a +1/+1 counters. And so there are Hydras in the deck. Zixara actually plays with that because when you cast any spells with X in the deck, you get Hydra tokens which you can then mutate onto to make even bigger creatures when you mutate. That's a little bit of synergy in the deck, and Zixara otherwise is kind of more like a Hydra commander. It doesn't really play with the mutate that well. I guess the mutate is fine on top of your Hydras, but you're really trying to ramp with Zixara and cast your Hydras and then just make big X size creatures that you can bash with. It's not as subtle a thing, but then you get 2 of them, when you cast them. So Zixara is not a subtle commander, but it's fine. It does what it wants to do, and if you like casting X spells, this is not a terrible commander to take and then kind of mutate this deck really more into an X spell deck as opposed to the split up deck that it is. The final pair of commanders, we have Ukima and Kaza, and these are fairly generic as far as commanders go. I don't think it plays very strongly with what this deck is trying to do, aside from getting counters on Ukima and hitting harder with it, and then when it dies, it can deal damage to a player. That's fine. These are fairly generic. They do work well as a result of their relative generic status, and so you don't really need this to be in this deck, but you could build just about any deck with these two, and they'll do their thing in terms of just growing and getting bigger and hitting your opponent. So I don't love that these are fairly generic as far as commanders go, and I feel like the deck is a bit crippled because one of them wants to mutate and one of them wants to be a X spell deck, and they don't really play perfectly well together. But the mutate stuff was really fun, and although I never really got around to casting major Hydras because the deck ended up losing too quickly when I ended up playing Zixara as the main commander, I think that the deck can be fun, especially if you lean a bit more towards playing Oshimi as your face commander. That said, there's a place for Zixara, and perhaps some sort of X deck will make use of that, but I think that the compromise as a result of trying to follow both of these particular themes makes the deck a little weaker on both of them. I did have a lot of fun when I was able to get massive mutate benefits, but that does mean that your giant massively mutated creature is a little bit vulnerable, and so that's another thing that you want to keep an eye out for. If I were going to modify this deck, I would probably move towards one of these 2 commanders and then adjust the deck so that you can get rid of the weaker mutate cards if you're playing Zixara, or just really put in a lot more mutate cards and maybe get rid of the X theme that exists in the deck and really streamline the deck a lot more towards what you're trying to do. So that is my thoughts regarding the Enhanced Evolution Commander deck. Let me know what your thoughts were, if your experiences were different from mine, in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.